And if you think about Musab was somebody that came from a privileged position in society. His parents were extremely wealthy, and he was extremely handsome and charismatic. He was the type of person that they would say all of the men wanted to be him and all of the women wanted to be with him. He was somebody that when the latest clothes came out, he was the first one to wear them. When the latest shoes came out, he was the first one to buy them. Any of the trends that were happening in Persia or Rome, he was always the trendsetter in his society. He was what you could call an influencer in his society. And so the Prophet ﷺ looked at him and looked at the delegation of people that had come to him, and he noticed that they were all young people, and so he decided to choose Musab to be his ambassador. And what's interesting is that this was a young person who, even though he came from privilege, he decided to sacrifice that for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because when he became Muslim, and again he was around the age of 17, it was extremely difficult for him in the beginning because his parents went against this decision and decided to fight him in this decision. But he continued to stick to Rasulullah and study the Deen to the point that the Prophet ﷺ was so happy and pleased with him and happy with his knowledge that he decided to send him as an ambassador. And Yathrib at that time was a city that was dominated by youth, because for generations there had been an intertribal war between the Aus and the Khazraj, and all of the elders had been killing each other off. So most of the population was young. And so when this young, handsome, charismatic 17-year-old man landed in Yathrib, by the same time next year, he came back to the Prophet ﷺ with a delegation of over 70 people. And Islam had entered most of the homes in the city of Yathrib, and the ground was ready and ripe for Rasulullah ﷺ to look at them and say, now I'm pleased and I'm going to make intention to make hijrah. And so they gave again a second pledge, which is the pledge of Aqaba, and that's when the Prophet ﷺ decided to make his decision. So we can see then that in the early Meccan period, the Prophet ﷺ was supported by a youth in the person of Arqam. And then now in the new phase of his life, which was going to be his period in Medina, he was supported by another youth, which was Musab. And then after that, when he decides to make the hijrah, who does he turn to replace him in his home, in his bed, when he knows that people are looking for him? Who does he entrust his affairs to? Because he was known as As-Sadiq Al-Amin, the truthful one and the trustworthy one, to the point that so many people had come to him and they had placed trusts with him, they had placed objects with him, and they had entrusted him with things. He took all of that responsibility and he gave it to his young cousin, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, who was 23 years old roughly at that time. He could have given it to an elder, he could have given it to a more responsible person, but he chose that responsibility and he decided to give that responsibility to Ali. And so on the night when he decides to make hijrah with Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and they leave Mecca, and the Quraysh gather at his house in an attempt to kill him, and come to his bed and they see a figure lying in the bed, that figure is Ali. And they realize that he was willing to lay his life down on the line for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.